Pokemon, the largest media franchise on the planet, or so the almighty Pokemon Company keeps saying. It would be an understatement to say that this franchise is beloved by many around the world, and that includes me. I fell in love with Pokemon when I picked Turtwig on Route 201 and have been ever since. You may not think that based on the severe lack of buying their shit that I've done, but hey, they're the largest media franchise on the planet. They'll be fine if they miss out on a few of my dollary dues. Anyway, I have a friend who is also obsessed with Pokemon, and one day they sent this reel in the government-mandated glob chat. It was a post containing some takes on the Pokemon games, and amongst others, Marlos Burner offers this take.
Number 1, Johto is ass and it's just Kanto DLC.
Now, I never usually get riled up by someone else's opinion online. Okay, that's not true. But for some reason, this comment really stuck with me more than usual. Johto isn't the perfect region, but it was certainly instrumental in course correcting from the travesty that was the first gen. Don't get me wrong, I respect Gen 1 Pokemon, but in a way that you respect a 90-year-old World War II vet who acts creepy around junior high school girls. You're grateful for what it's done, but my god is it a mess. You've most likely heard of the famous glitches like Missing No and the Professor Oak softlock, but there are so many other bugs and coding decisions that are just bizarre. Off the top of my head, I know that Leech Seed and Toxic would stack and compound on top of each other, allowing Pokemon like Venusaur to completely sweep entire teams if they could set up. I know critical hits were based off of speed, meaning that if you had a fast Pokemon like Persian who knew Slash, it would basically land critical hits every single time. One-hit KO moves were also tied to the speed stat, but those types of moves were only learnt by heavy tanky Pokemon, making them practically useless. But one of the most fucked up coding decisions was how the frozen status effect worked. If your Pokemon got frozen during battle, that was it. It wouldn't thaw out until you used a fire move on it. And since there were no double battles yet, the only way that would happen is if the enemy team used said fire move of their own accord. I'm pretty sure they banned ice moves that could freeze in official tournaments because of this. Despite the slipshod state that Pokemon Red and Green originally released in, they were eventually major successes. The developers at Game Freak were already working on a sequel after the first game's release, but growing demand for an international release of the first games and a port of Nintendo 64 presented a major problem for the then tiny development team. The state of Red and Green's code was so incomprehensible that it was a nightmare to port it to any other console, and an international release would only hamper development time for the sequel. It was an immense, nay, impossible task for anyone to even attempt. You would need to be some sort of master coder to even think about deciphering the game. Oh. Wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh. Sweet! And with Iwata's help, Pokemon Gold and Silver came out internationally in the year 2000, and compared to its predecessors, it's such a massive improvement. Obviously, the inclusion of more than 2 colors on the screen set it leagues ahead already, but the amount of staples of the franchise that these games introduce is really impressive. Dark and Steel type are from these games. Held items, including berries, are from these games. Registering items to select, Pokemon breeding, day-night cycle, shinies, all of these originate in these games. A bit of a note about shinies actually, there is technically a way to hunt them in Gen 1. It involves trading specific Pokemon with the right stats between games, but they only had the shiny appearance in the second gen games. I think it's really cool how a new mechanic in a game's sequel can completely recontextualize how you view the original. Few games have the honor of claiming that. Okay, back to the video. Along with being an improvement from the first game's ideas, Pokemon Gold and Silver are just great games in their own right. The people in the world are more emotive and interesting to interact with. There's this sweet old daycare couple who seems very passionate about raising a Pokemon. There's this guy in the forest who's worried about losing his job because he lost his boss's Farfetch'd. You'll get people who will call you up to tell you about random events that are going around in the region. It's such a fun way to make the world feel more alive. The region itself is also so much more fun to explore and poke around at its nooks and crannies. It's a beautiful region in general. I remember when I was playing the first game, I felt really bored with its layout. It's cool how it looped around on itself, but a lot of the towns looked really samey and kind of brutalist. The environments in the second games feel much more warm and homey, looking less like a collection of city buildings and more like a variety of towns and cities with unique aesthetics and cultures. The music is also so good. I feel like the music in this gen never gets as much love as the other ones. There's so many soothing tracks like the Pokepark theme. Never before has catching a Scyther felt so serene. Ecruteak City's theme has always been one of my personal favorites. I never really played this game as a kid, but something about the song just makes me feel so nostalgic. Like I'm pining for a time in my life that never really existed. But what really takes the cake is the gym leader theme. Oh my god! The gym leaders in general are so much more interesting to fight compared to the first game. The Kanto League felt like a gaggle of farts who didn't know the first thing about Pokemon, whereas the Johto League employed, actual strategy. Faulkner's Pidgey sand attacks you to set up for Pidgeotto to finish you off. Whitney's Miltank stalls you out to flatten you into pieces. And Morty's Gengar outspeeds your slumbering Pokemon and haunts them in their nightmares. The tension of the battle builds and builds, and before you know it, you're right where they want you. Just listen to that crescendo. These fights are made so much more exciting by the music, and I really believe it's one of the best gym themes in the entire franchise. But one of my favorite things about Gen 2 is how it builds on the story of the first game. When you boil down Red and Green to its core elements, it's a pretty simple game. You're a young child of 10 years old who catches cool creatures to fight them and become the very best. Like no one ever was, if you will. But we never usually see beyond this point. We never get a glimpse of what being the very best looks like, save for some post-game content. But Gold and Silver, set 3 years after the events of the first, makes an interesting point about the consequences this journey has on both people and Pokemon. Throughout the entirety of the game, you are surrounded by people on their own journeys of power and glory. Your rival, this troubled teen sort, resorts to violence and abuse in order to toughen up his Pokemon. The fourth gym leader, Morty, holds himself to this impossible standard of becoming strong enough to win the favor of the legendary Pokemon. Team Rocket, or a mere splinter of its former self after being thwarted 3 years prior, goes on a crime spree across the region in an attempt to recapture their former glory. There's a running theme in this world about the pursuit of total power and how it affects people, how it affects Pokemon, and how it affects one's spirit. But you're not like that. You love your Pokemon and treat them with respect. Eventually, you yourself reach the end of your journey. You battle your way through the Johto League and become champion, but something feels off. This can't be it. There has to be something more. I mean, yeah, you're a kid, but this was child's play. And then you remember something you ever heard while stealing with Team Rocket back home. Whispers of a legendary trainer who single-handedly defeated Team Rocket in Kanto, became champion himself. That's it, you think. He must be the ultimate trainer, the final challenge for you to face. After blitzing through the Kanto League and searching the land far and wide, you discover his location, Mount Silver, a cold, desolate limbo that separates Kanto and Johto, and it's deep into the pitch-dark mountainside cavern, right at its very apex, that you find him. There's no gloating or grandiose speech when you finally grab his attention. It's just you, him, and the knowledge that only one of you will be leaving this place. There's no turning back now. You two have locked eyes, and as Pokemon trainers, you both know what this means. The immense gravity of these two astronomical beings creates an oppressive, suffocating atmosphere, and all is silent for a brief moment. And then, as if by some unspoken agreement, the battle begins. This fight is one of the most special in the entire franchise. It opens with a reprisal of the first game's opening theme, reminding you of how far you've come since then. But as you start setting up and slinging attacks at your foe, it soars into this anthem of pure energy and tension. The battle is grueling, with both of you pushing your Pokemon to the very limit. You guard, dodge, and counter with blow after blow of calculated attacks of what feels like a lifetime of battling experience. Your opponent puts up a good fight, but he's part of the old guard. A time when Pokemon was novel and easy to master and exploit. But being the first to rise the ranks leaves you open to the eroding waves of innovation. And after everything you've learned, all the blood, sweat, and tears that you put in to get here, there's no stopping the tides of change. And it's with one final well-placed attack that you defeat his final Pokemon, supplanting yourself as the undisputed champion of Pokemon. When you finally beat him, he doesn't say anything. Whether his silence is bitter fury for being dethroned or graceful acceptance of his emancipation, we'll never know. For after seeing you in the aftermath of this glorious battle for only a moment, he vanishes without a trace, leaving you alone to revel in your victory. It's something you'll have to get used to. The loneliness, the isolation, a literal specter, a goal to aspire to, rather than a human being, a child with hopes and dreams. For you have done it. You are the very best, the top of your class, an ace at the very apex of trainerdom. And you will remain so, knowing that one day, someday, your time will run short. Whether it be a day, a week, or until the end of your days, you don't know. But until then, you wait, all alone, in the dark. A shallow victory for your pursuit of ultimate power. As I said before, Gen 2 is not a perfect game. The final grind for the red battle was rough, even with the sped up emulator. It also didn't help that the level curve was really challenging to deal with on top of that. A lot of the newer Pokemon that they introduced in Gen 2 are only available after you beat Lance, which I imagine was to create a steady stream of new Pokemon to discover throughout the entire game. But it was admittedly very frustrating trying to build a team before realizing the Pokemon I wanted was locked off in another region. These are all points that Marlis Burner makes in his reel, but I don't think that makes this game ass, as he puts it. Modern day Pokemon has all but stagnated when it comes to innovation, except when it comes to monetizing the fan base. It's very clear that the largest media franchise on the planet has become complacent raking in cash with minimal effort, and we as a fan base have contributed to that complacency. Gen 2 harkens back to a time in Pokemon's development when innovation was not only sought after, but crucial to the game's survival. Pokemon, I feel, despite the money it's making, is dying from a lack of new ideas. We have gone from a broken, buggy mess in Gen 1 to a broken, buggy mess in Gen 9. And now, more than ever, we need a course correction that will save this franchise. Because despite its flaws, Gen 2 is the type of ambitious sequel that Pokemon needs.